Less than an hour. That's how long it took U.S. Special Operations Forces to extract Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela. Delta Force commandos, over 150 aircraft, cyber attacks that blacked out Caracas, and precision raids on 2 fortified military bases. The mission was complete before Venezuelan forces even understood what was happening. It was one of the most complex military operations since the Bin Laden raid. That's the U.S. military in 2026. It is not just powerful on paper, but lethally effective when it matters. Today, we're breaking down what makes this possible. The technology, the training, the infrastructure, and the one advantage no other nation can replicate. Let's start with what just happened in Venezuela and work backwards to understand the machine that made it possible. The Maduro operation wasn't just about special forces skill, though Delta Force operators are among the most elite fighters on Earth. It was about integration, cyber attacks coordinated with kinetic strikes, intelligence gathered from space-based satellites and human sources, and air support ranging from stealth fighters to armed Reaper drones. This marked the first operational use of one-way attack drones by the U.S. military, electronic warfare that jammed Venezuelan communications while U.S. forces maintained perfect connectivity. Over 150 aircraft launching from 20 different military bases and naval vessels, all synchronized to hit targets within the same 30-minute window. That level of coordination doesn't happen by accident. It requires decades of investment in command and control systems, interoperable equipment, and most importantly, combat-tested doctrine that works under pressure. China has more ships, Russia has more tanks and artillery, but neither one can execute an operation like this. The capability gap isn't just about equipment, it's about integration, experience, and the ability to project overwhelming force anywhere on Earth within hours.
Our job is to be willing to raise our right hand and defend it. There's laws that are made, there's declarations that are made, and then there are men and women who defend it. That's exactly what you do.
So where does this capability come from? Follow the money. The United States has a budget of over $1 trillion on defense in 2026, a 13% increase from the previous year. China officially reports $245 billion. Russia spent $157 billion, actually down from last year due to Ukraine war depletion, but spending alone doesn't explain the gap. Saudi Arabia spends $75 billion annually, and nobody considers them a military superpower. Money matters, but what you spend it on matters more. America invests heavily in 3 areas that multiply combat effectiveness beyond what raw budgets suggest. First, research and development. The Pentagon's research, development, test and evaluation budget jumped by $38 billion in fiscal year 2026. That funds 6th-generation fighters, hypersonic missiles, directed energy weapons, artificial intelligence for battlefield management, and autonomous combat systems. Second, logistics and global infrastructure. The US maintains over 750 military installations in more than 80 countries worldwide. Forward deployed forces, pre-positioned equipment, refueling networks, intelligence facilities. This allows rapid response anywhere. The Venezuela operation used assets from bases spread across the Caribbean, Central America, and offshore naval vessels, all coordinated seamlessly. Third, training and retention. American service members are volunteers, not conscripts. They receive continuous professional development, realistic combat training, and access to the most advanced simulation systems on the planet. A US infantry squad has probably run through more combat scenarios in training than some countries' armies face in actual warfare. Now for the technology that money buys. 2025 marked a turning point in US military modernization. Not prototypes and concept demonstrations, but actual operational systems entering service. The Pentagon prioritized 6 critical technology areas for 2026. Artificial intelligence applications, directed energy weapons, hypersonic strike systems, quantum sensing and communications, contested logistics technologies, biomanufacturing for domestic production of critical materials, directed energy weapons, high-powered lasers that shoot down drones and missiles, crossed from experimental to operationally credible in 2025. Multiple systems successfully engaged real targets in test conditions. The Navy deployed laser systems on destroyers. The Army fielded truck-mounted high-energy lasers for base defense. Cost per shot, essentially the price of electricity. Compare that to firing a $3 million interceptor missile at a $2,000 drone. The Air Force accelerated funding for the RTX-led hypersonic attack cruise missile with $803 million allocated for fiscal 2026. These weapons can strike targets thousands of miles away in minutes, too far fast for traditional air defenses to respond. These aren't science fiction concepts, they're being fielded as we speak. The B-21 Raider stealth bomber expanded flight testing with multiple aircraft now in the test program. This is not the B-2 Spirit from the 1990s. The B-21 incorporates decades of advancement in stealth technology, sensors, and networked warfare capabilities. It can penetrate advanced air defenses that would destroy earlier generation aircraft. Then there's the F-47, a sixth-generation fighter that received a ceremonious White House rollout and $3.5 billion in funding for fiscal 2026. This represents a generational leap beyond even the F-22 and F-35. Advanced stealth, hypersonic weapons capability, artificial intelligence-assisted piloting, and the ability to command drone wingmen, which brings us to collaborative combat aircraft, autonomous drones that fly alongside manned fighters, designated as official weapon systems in 2025. They extend sensor coverage, carry additional weapons, and can be sent into high-threat environments without risking pilot lives. The fiscal 2026 budget allocated $789 million for these systems. By 2030, the U.S. Air Force plans to field hundreds of them. Space capabilities received major investments too. Proliferated low Earth orbit satellite constellations for resilient communications went operational. Unlike traditional military satellites that orbit at high altitude and make easy targets, these new systems use hundreds of small satellites in low orbit. Destroying a few doesn't degrade the network. They provide jam-resistant connectivity for forces operating anywhere on Earth. Golden Dome, the controversial missile defense system for homeland protection, received increased funding and public attention in 2025. Space-based sensors, advanced interceptors, and layered defense systems designed to counter ballistic missile threats. The system sparked debate about costs and feasibility, but the Pentagon continues pushing development forward. All of this technology feeds into CJDA-DC-2, Combined Joint All-Domain Command and Control, the unsexy acronym for the most important capability the U.S. military is building. Real-time integration of sensors and shooters across all domains: land, sea, air, space, and cyber. AI-assisted decision-making that compresses the kill chain from detection to engagement into seconds instead of minutes. That's what made the Venezuela operation possible. Intelligence from space-based satellites, signals intercepts, human sources, all fused together. Commanders see the same operational picture in real time. Cyber warfare teams, special operations forces, air support, and electronic warfare all synchronized through networked systems. China and Russia are trying to build similar capabilities, but they are years behind, and catching up is harder than it looks, because it's not just about buying the technology, it's about integrating it, training with it, and developing the doctrine to use it effectively in combat. Which brings us to the experience advantage. The United States has been in continuous combat operations for over 80 years. American forces have fought on every continent except Antarctica, jungles, deserts, mountains, urban terrain, high-altitude, maritime environments, conventional warfare, counterinsurgency, special operations, peacekeeping, humanitarian missions, everything. Every conflict teaches lessons that get incorporated into training, doctrine, and equipment requirements. Body armor improvements came from casualties in Iraq. Mine-resistant vehicles were developed in response to improvised explosive devices threats in Afghanistan. Drone tactics evolved from years of operations in the Middle East and Southwest Asia. Counter-drone systems emerged from facing cheap commercial drones weaponized by insurgents. US commanders have real combat experience, not parade ground experience, not peacetime exercises, but actual decision-making under fire, dealing with Murphy's Law when plans fall apart, adapting to unexpected enemy actions, managing logistics under stress, coordinating air support for troops in contact. That knowledge is irreplaceable. China's last major combat was 1979 against Vietnam. That's 47 years ago. Nobody currently serving in the People's Liberation Army has combat experience beyond occasional border skirmishes. Their equipment is unproven. Their tactics are theoretical. Their logistics have never been tested under actual wartime conditions. Russia is bleeding experience in Ukraine, but not the kind that builds competence. They're learning that their logistics are dysfunctional, their command structure is rigid and slow, their equipment maintenance is inadequate, and corruption has undermined readiness at every level. These are expensive lessons that will take years to fix, assuming they even can under current conditions. Meanwhile, the United States military conducts more training exercises in a single year than most countries do in a decade. Red Flag for air combat, National Training Center for ground forces, the Rim of the Pacific exercise for naval operations. These aren't simple drills, they're complex scenarios with opposing forces that replicate peer threats, incorporating electronic warfare, cyber attacks, and degraded communications. American forces train like they fight, which is why they fight so effectively. Now for the actual hardware behind all this capability. The US maintains 13,000 aircraft, more than China and Russia combined. Not just the quantity, the diversity and quality matters. Stealth fighters, fourth-generation fighters, dedicated strategic bombers, tactical bombers, close air support aircraft, electronic warfare planes, aerial refueling tankers, strategic airlift, tactical airlift, attack helicopters, transport helicopters, reconnaissance aircraft, command and control aircraft. Each type serves specific roles, and the whole system works together. F-35 stealth fighters locate targets and share data with legacy F-15s and F-16s that carry more weapons but lack stealth. B-52 bombers launch standoff missiles from hundreds of miles away. A-10 Warthogs provide close air support with 30mm cannons. C-17 cargo planes deliver troops and equipment to austere airfields. KC-46 tankers refuel fighters mid-flight, extending their range indefinitely. At sea, displacement tonnage tells the real story. The US Navy weighs 4.5 million tons. China's fleet, despite having more individual vessels, weighs 2 million tons. Russia sits at 1.2 million tons. America's 11 nuclear-powered supercarriers project power globally. 10 of them are Nimitz-class carriers, the backbone of US naval power for over 4 decades. These massive warships revolutionized naval warfare when the first one, USS Nimitz, entered service in 1975. Each one displaces over 100,000 tons fully loaded. Each one carries 60 to 80 aircraft, more air power than most countries' entire air forces. They operate for 20 to 25 years between nuclear refuelings. The Nimitz-class carriers have proven themselves in every major conflict since the Cold War. Desert Storm, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria. They've launched thousands of combat sorties, maintained continuous presence in critical regions, and demonstrated the ability to sustain high-tempo operations for months at a time. USS Theodore Roosevelt, USS Abraham Lincoln, USS George Washington, USS Carl Vinson. These are 40 years of institutional knowledge about how to operate carrier strike groups effectively. The 11th carrier, USS Gerald R. Ford, represents the next generation. The lead ship of the new Ford class that incorporates decades of technological advancement, electromagnetic catapults that launch more aircraft per day with less stress on airframes, advanced arresting gear that recovers aircraft more safely, upgraded nuclear reactors that generate 3 times the electrical power of Nimitz-class ships, critical for future directed energy weapons and electromagnetic systems. The USS John F. Kennedy, the second Ford-class carrier, just completed sea trials successfully and joins the fleet in 2027. The third Ford-class carrier, USS Enterprise, is already under construction. These ships represent the most advanced naval technology ever built. Each carrier gets escorted by Aegis destroyers with advanced radar and missile systems that can engage hundreds of targets simultaneously. The US has 81 destroyers total. Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers that provide air defense, anti-submarine warfare, surface combat, and land attack capabilities. They carry vertical launch systems loaded with dozens of missiles. Tomahawk cruise missiles for striking land targets, Standard missiles for air defense, ASROC anti-submarine rockets, Harpoon anti-ship missiles. While China's been building destroyers rapidly in recent years, they still lack the combat experience and proven reliability of US systems. Then there are the submarines, the silent killers that operate beneath the surface where most of the world never sees them. The US submarine force is the most advanced and lethal underwater fleet ever assembled. America operates 70 submarines total that breaks down into 4 distinct types, each with specific missions. First, the ballistic missile submarines, Ohio-class SSBNs, the most survivable leg of America's nuclear triad. 14 of these submarines patrol the world's oceans, each one carrying 20 Trident II ballistic missiles. Each missile carries multiple nuclear warheads. These submarines can hide in the vastness of the ocean, virtually undetectable, guaranteeing a devastating second strike capability, even if America's land-based missiles and bomber force were somehow destroyed. They're the ultimate insurance policy against nuclear attack. Here's what makes US submarines so terrifying. They're incredibly quiet. Older Russian and Chinese submarines can be heard from hundreds of miles away by American sonar systems. US submarines, especially the Seawolf and Virginia class, are so silent. They're called black holes in the ocean. They disappear into the ambient noise of the sea. They're so quiet that an incident once occurred where 2 American submarines couldn't detect each other on sonar and collided in the Atlantic. The USS Hartford and USS New Orleans, both Los Angeles-class boats, were operating in the same area during training exercises in 2009. line. Neither one could hear the other until impact. If US submarines can't find each other, how is any other navy supposed to find them? They operate with near impunity in areas where enemy navies think they have control. They've penetrated heavily defended harbors undetected. They've tracked enemy submarines for weeks while remaining completely unknown to their targets. Russia has 63 submarines total. China has 61. Both countries have been modernizing their submarine forces, building quieter boats with better sensors and weapons, but they're still a generation behind US technology. Russian submarines are louder, easier to track, and their crews have less training and sea time due to budget constraints. Chinese submarines are improving rapidly, but they lack the operational experience of the US Navy's submarine force, which has been operating nuclear-powered attack submarines since 1954. The US Navy maintains the world's most sophisticated anti-submarine warfare capability as well. P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft with advanced sonar buoys and magnetic anomaly detectors, MH-60R helicopters equipped with dipping sonar and torpedoes, Aegis destroyers with towed array sonar systems attack submarines, hunting other submarines. Underwater sensor networks that monitor choke points and critical areas. The entire system works together to detect, track, and if necessary, destroy enemy submarines. Amphibious capabilities matter too. The US operates 9 helicopter carriers, large amphibious assault ships that carry Marines, their equipment, helicopters, and F-35B vertical takeoff fighters. China has 4, Japan has 4, Russia has none. These ships enable expeditionary warfare, putting thousands of troops ashore quickly with air support. On land, the US has 4,640 M1 Abrams tanks. Russia claims 5,750, but that's pre-Ukraine. Report says they've lost thousands in combat. China has 6,800, but most are older models with less capable systems. The Abrams remains the gold standard for main battle tanks, 73 tons of composite armor that withstands most anti-tank weapons. 120mm smoothbore cannon that destroys enemy armor from over 2 miles away. Thermal sights that see through darkness and smoke. Battle management systems that share data with other friendly forces, continuous upgrades over 40 years of service. America has 390,000 armored vehicles. This includes Bradley fighting vehicles, Strykers, MRAPs, and specialized vehicles for every conceivable role. Not just transporting troops, providing fire support, recovering damaged equipment, clearing mines, electronic warfare, medical evacuation, command and control. One area where numbers favor rivals is artillery. Russia has 5,000 self-propelled artillery systems. China has 3,500. The US has 671. This looks like a problem until you understand American doctrine. Why mass artillery when you can deliver precision fires from aircraft? A single GPS-guided bomb hits within feet of the target. Artillery shells land in a general area. Aircraft strike from 30,000 feet beyond the range of most ground-based air defenses. Artillery requires moving heavy equipment to firing positions, expending huge amounts of ammunition, and risking counter-battery fire. The US uses artillery for specific roles where it makes sense. For mass fires and long-range precision strikes, air power and missiles do the job better. Different philosophy, same results. One capability that doesn't show up in most comparisons is the US defense industrial base. America doesn't just operate advanced weapons, it builds them at scale. RTX recently signed agreements with the Pentagon to ramp up production of 5 munitions, including Tomahawk cruise missiles and advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles. Similar deals with Lockheed Martin boost production of PAC-3 and THAAD interceptor missiles. A $1 billion investment in rocket motor production increases capacity for various missile systems. This matters because modern warfare consumes precision munitions at alarming rates. Ukraine fired more artillery shells in months than the US expected to use in years. Drone warfare requires large inventories of counter-drone systems and interceptors. The ability to surge production during conflict, to rebuild stockpiles quickly, gives enormous strategic advantage. China has manufacturing capacity, but their defense industry lacks the experience base of American contractors. Russia's defense production struggles with sanctions, technology access, and quality control issues exposed by Ukraine. They can build equipment, but can they build it well in quantity, quickly? The US defense industrial base has been producing advanced weapons for 80 years. Building fighter jets, ships, tanks, missiles, satellites. That experience base, the skilled workforce, the supply chains, the quality standards can't be replicated overnight. One advantage America has that never shows up in military comparisons is the armed civilian population. 120 firearms for every 100 Americans. Over 400 million guns in private hands. Millions of military military veterans with combat training. An invasion of the United States doesn't just face 1.3 million active duty troops and 800,000 reservists. It faces an armed population of over 100 million people defending their homes on familiar terrain. So where does all this leave us in 2026? Global firepower ranks the US with a power index of 0.0741, Russia at 0.0791, China at 0.0919. That gap represents the cumulative effect of everything we've discussed. Higher spending, better technology, more experience, superior logistics, stronger alliances, proven combat effectiveness. The gap isn't closing, it's widening. Every year, America fields new capabilities while maintaining existing strengths. The trillion-dollar budget enables continued modernization. F-47 sixth-generation fighters, hypersonic weapons, directed energy systems, autonomous drones, next-generation bombers and submarines. China is trying to catch up. They're building ships quickly, modernizing their air force, developing their own stealth fighters and hypersonic weapons. But they're playing catch-up to a moving target. By the time they field systems to counter current US capabilities, America will have moved on to the next generation. Russia is struggling just to replace equipment lost in Ukraine. Their defense industry operates under sanctions, their economy can't sustain the spending levels needed to maintain peer competition. They're falling further behind, not catching up. The United States isn't just the strongest military in the world, it operates in a category by itself. The only force capable of projecting overwhelming power anywhere on Earth against any adversary. The only military with the experience, technology, logistics, and industrial base to fight and win major wars on multiple fronts simultaneously.